Hello, my name is Naeema Muhammad, and I am the organizing director for the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network. The North Carolina Environmental Justice Network is an organization that was founded in 1998 um, in as a part of a regional organization to address environmental concerns that was impacting um, predominantly African American, Native American, Latinx communities, but was not a part of the conversation uh, amongst the traditional environmental groups that was addressing environmental issues, but never anything addressing the human impacts of environmental harms. And so the North Carolina Environmental Justice Network came together to begin looking at these issues and to also engage these same communities in the conversation about the environment, because during that time, back during the time we formed, there was not a lot of conversation in the black and brown communities about environmental uh, justice or any kind of concerns about the environment. People knew something was changing in their communities, but they didn't have any idea what it was and why it was. And one of the largest things that we found to be a problem in our communities was the industrial agriculture, as they call it. Um, but it's where they're keeping animals confined into small spaces. Um, During the beginning of this time, we were talking about pigs and pigs only. Smithfield came to town, and as Smithfield came to town and began this industrialized agriculture, um, they the growth of the pigs was very rapid, and they we went from a few pigs up to 10 million pigs in North Carolina. By mapping the permits, we found that the 10 million pigs was mostly in eastern North Carolina, sitting in predominantly African American communities, Native American and Latinx communities, and we deemed this environmental racism because we felt like these communities were intentionally targeted because of being perceived to have very little political and economic power to fight off this company. Smithfield came to town; they were billionaires, and industrialized agriculture has brought them huge profits in North Carolina as a result of the way they raise these animals. So these industrialized agriculture, what it looks like is you can ride through any of the communities where these animals are, and you will see these metal housing, little metal houses, and each metal house could have up to 5,000 pigs inside the house. The space inside is um, very little space for that many animals. And so they are confined to these little cages, and it's very little room for the animals to move around. And as a result, they wind up with a lot of broken limbs and, a lot of aborted pigs and illnesses that take place inside these houses because of the close proximity of the animals to each other. So the industry's answer to that problem is to give these animals low doses of antibiotics and hormones on a daily basis. They say the antibiotics is to prevent illnesses, and the hormones we know will promote rapid growth. In their rush to get these pigs to the market, now it's just a matter of a few months that these animals go from babies to 350-pound animals to be taken slaughtered at the marketplace. Um, and Smithfield owned the largest slaughterhouse in the country, in the world, really. The world's largest slaughterhouse is in Tar Heel, North Carolina. Again, that's a part of the southeastern part of the state. They employ about 5,500 workers there, slaughtering about 39,000 pigs per day. The problem with this kind of industrialized agriculture is the waste management program that they have in North Carolina. They have what's called a lagoon and spray field system. And the lagoon, we always say to people, we're not talking about that blue lagoon that Brooke Shields hung out in. We're talking about a lagoon that's filled with nothing but feces and urine from all of these pigs. And these pigs, these 10 million pigs, are producing about 9 million tons of uh, animal waste on an annual basis that's going into our rivers and streams and on the land mass in eastern North Carolina. And the lagoon is just where they dug a hole in the ground and decided that this would be sufficient to hold the waste from these animals. And then everything that the animals do inside the hog houses, they have slats in the floor for the waste to filter through, and it falls through the cracks, and then it go into the pipes, and the pipes pipe it out to the lagoon, and it sits out in the air openly until they decide to irrigate it. So what they have to do is once those lagoons begin filling up, they then irrigate this waste out around the fields and crops in the communities. They call it fertilizer. They call it organic fertilizer. As a matter of fact, they told the community there was no harm to it and that, it was okay for them to be doing this. But the problem with the way they handle this waste and the irrigating of it and sitting out in those open air lagoons is that it has all kinds of toxic chemicals, and there's a lot of hydrogen sulfide that comes off of those lagoons because of that waste sitting out there, and it's making people in the community sick. As an organizer, I've been working with these communities since the early 2000s, and the things that I've heard people say is, it makes you sick. You get very nauseated. You throw up. Your eyes burn. Your nose run. You get headaches and just angry and frustrated from being forced to live like that. And the odors are so noxious to people don't want to be outside anymore. They say I don't want to go outside because it stinks so bad. And if I have things to do outside, I get up in the morning, I crack my door open just a little bit to see if it's stinking outside. If it's not stinking, then I rush out to do what I have to do so that I can get back in before the odor comes. Because once the odor comes, you do not want to be outside. And the thing that I've noticed in working in these communities, children love to be outdoors. They like playing outside and just being out. But you ride through these communities anytime. You could just pick a time on the hottest day in the summertime. You can ride through. You will not see children outside playing because of the odors and the flies that these animals bring into the community. It causes um, an overflux of flies, mosquitoes, snakes. People report, and I have witnessed buzzards sitting on what they call dead boxes. That these dead boxes look like a big trash dumpster that sits out at the highway in any community, and the workers at these hog houses, when the animals die there, they will take the dead animals from these hog houses and carry them to one of those dumpsters. and they call them dead boxes. And the dead boxes just sitting there, and they're dumping the dead animals. You can ride by a dead box at any time and see turkeys and chickens and pigs just piled up inside these dead boxes. Buzzards are lurking because it's food for them, and they're lurking around them, and they sit there until they have trucks that come by from time to time to pick these animals up. When the animals pile up, there are no tops on them, so they just sitting out there in the open. But these are the kinds of things that the community has to live with. And people have lost use of their property, so they are not able to enjoy their property on wells. They've been forced off of their wells because of ground contamination. Because when they're spraying that waste, it's seeping into the soil, and so the ground was becoming contaminated. People began seeing that through changes in their well water. Some of the things they reported happening is that the water began to look murky, some of it looked milky, but more than that, the smells coming from their wells and the odors are just noxious. And like I said, it makes people sick. I remember one teacher reporting that at the school she worked at, they were having issues there because the children would go in their lunchroom and get sick on the stomach trying to eat lunch because the odors was coming through the vents at the school. They have to buy bottled water in order to have enough clean water to take care of their daily needs. In 1997, there was a moratorium put in place by our General Assembly um, to slow down the growth of the pork industry into North Carolina. And so the moratorium expired every 2 years. So every 2 years they was automatically renewing that moratorium. But in the year 2006, we heard talk that they may not renew that moratorium, which was coming up for renewal. Smithfield told the General Assembly that these community members were lying and making up this stuff, that there was no way that they were being impacted in the way that they were stating. And so as a result, um, researchers, not just in North Carolina, but from other states, began looking at the impacts of industrialized agriculture on humans, on human life. And as they did that, Dr. Wing in particular did a study called Community Health Effect of Industrialized hog operations. So what that in that research, he looked at the impact of this industry on people living in close proximity to these animals, and people were asked to sit outside twice a day um, for 10 minutes at a time, once in the morning, once in the evening. And during that 10-minute period, we had designed a journal, and the journal had questions in it that they would have to answer while sitting outside. And we had listed all of the different symptoms that we had heard people talking about: the running nose, the burning eyes, the headaches, the frustration, the anger, the nausea, these things. And we asked people to check off any symptoms that showed up in them during this 10-minute period that they were sitting outside. Once the 10 minutes were up, people were asked to go back inside. And once inside, they had to check their blood pressure, do a saliva sample. They were also asked to breathe flow meter. And as the results of that research showed that people had elevated blood pressures. There was a lot of upper respiratory problems, high rates of asthma, in particular, high rates of asthma amongst children. And so, there was all of these kinds of things that was recognized from the research. And we set up a mock hog farm. And so we had these two little hog houses sitting out on the grounds, and they were built by two of our community members. And then we had we bought two baby swimming pools and put them between the two hog houses and called them our lagoon. That was our lagoon. So once we set up our lagoon, we had truckloads of organic fertilizer. Remember that word, organic fertilizer. We trucked in 40 gallons of organic fertilizer. And as we were pouring our organic fertilizer into our lagoon, the facilities manager for the state, managing those grounds and those facilities there that the legislative were housing, came over to us and asked us what were we doing. And when we answered that we were setting up our lagoon, and he said, well, who told y'all to bring that waste out here? We said nobody, but didn't nobody tell us not to either. So then he said, well, if y'all spill one drop on this lawn out here, we're going to have to fine your organizations thousands of dollars for cleanup because we're going to have to call in hazmat because this is toxic waste. We was like, toxic waste, really? Well, we didn't know that because they told us it was organic fertilizer. We only drove it 40 miles up the highway, so we don't understand how it went from being organic to toxic in that short distance. The industry kept telling the legislators it was organic fertilizer, and that's why they felt they should be able to spray it, irrigate it out on the crops around the community, because they said it was not harming anybody. But when it got to Raleigh, it was toxic waste. So, we already know what that meant. Anyway, so that's, what goes on in the communities that's having to live with these animals. So the end result of the 51-hour vigil was that they did reinstate the moratorium because once we set up our mock hog farm, as the legislators walked by, they was like, "What is that smell?" And when we responded, our response was, "It's 40 gallons of animal waste." You asking the community live with 19 million tons of this stuff every year. You can't take 40 gallons. What is the problem? And so the moratorium is still in effect as I speak to you all today. So hopefully, they will find there is another way and a better way for them to handle that animal waste. And Smithfield entered into an agreement in 2000 with the state of North Carolina where they agreed to put superior technology on the ground to do away with this outdated lagoon and spray field system. And this is 2021, and they have not done it yet, and the state has not called their hand on it or forced them or made them live up to that agreement. Patty, thank you so much. And again, I would like to thank the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. It's been my pleasure, and I hope that it's been yours.